Hello and welcome, dear students. Today we are going to discuss an important topic of endocrinology, that is the regulation of neuroendocrine glands. The main objectives of today's lecture are to explain the different types of glands and their hormones, to give a brief account of neuroendocrine system, to know about the stimulation of the endocrine glands, to briefly understand the mechanism of regulation of neuroendocrine system, and finally we will be describing the hypothalamic control over the pituitary gland. Dear students, to begin with, let us first have a brief introduction about the endocrine system. The endocrine system harbors a network of glands throughout the body which secrete hormones of diverse chemical structure in order to regulate different body functions. The endocrine system acts through chemical messengers known as hormones that influence the growth, development and metabolic activities of the organism. The action of the endocrine system is measured in minutes, hours or weeks and is more generalized than the action of the nervous system. The endocrine system, along with the nervous system, functions in the regulation of the body activities. That's why we call this sometimes as the neuroendocrine system, as both the systems work together with each other. The nervous system acts through electrical impulses and neurotransmitters to cause muscle contraction and glandular secretion. The effect is of short duration, measured in seconds and localized. Dear students, in order to properly understand the endocrine system, we will first have a brief discussion about different types of endocrine glands and their secretions, that is the hormones. A gland represents a cell, tissue or organ responsible for secreting useful substances such as proteins, lipids, carbohydrates or a mixture of all of these substances. Let us first discuss the types of glands. Generally, the glands are classified into the following categories. On the basis of the site of secretion, the glands are classified as exocrine glands. Exocrine glands have ducts that carry their secretory products to a surface. These include salivary glands, sweat glands, lacrimal glands, sebaceous glands, mammary glands, intestinal glands, the glands that secrete digestive enzymes. The substances released by the exocrine glands regulate essential functions of the body. They are involved in regulating several body activities such as body temperature, protect skin and eyes, enables mothers to produce breast milk to feed their babies, and many other important functions. Next, the endocrine glands. The word endocrine is derived from the Greek terms endo meaning within and crine meaning to separate or secrete. The secretory products of endocrine glands are called hormones and are secreted directly into the blood and then carried throughout the body, where they influence only those cells or organs that have receptor sites for that hormone, as shown in the given figure. Endocrine glands include thyroid gland, pineal gland, pituitary gland, adrenal gland, etc. These hormones control a variety of important functions of the body like growth and development, reproduction, metabolism, and many other important functions including the reproductive behavior. Now the heterocrine glands. These are the glands having an exocrine and an endocrine part as well. The exocrine part releases its secretion by means of a duct, while as the endocrine part releases its secretion directly into the blood. Gonads and pancreas are the examples of heterocrine glands. Dear students, on the basis of mode of secretion as represented in the given figure, the glands are classified as neurocrine glands. Next, apocrine glands. Another is the holocrine glands. Neurocrine glands. These glands release their secretions throughout the cell membrane while the cell contents remain intact. Example are the goblet cells. Next is the apocrine glands. In these glands, the secretion accumulates as secretory granules in the distal part of the cell, which then breaks down and secretion is released. The example of these apocrine glands is the mammary glands. Another gland type is the holocrine glands. In these glands, the whole cell fills with a secretion which then breaks down and the secretion is released. For example, the sebaceous glands. The sebaceous glands are a type of the holocrine glands. Dear students, let's now discuss the hormones in brief. In scientific terms, the hormone can be defined as the substance of low molecular weight, chemically heterogeneous, non-nutritive, and produced in little amounts, and which acts as intracellular signaling molecule. A hormone is actually a type of mediator molecule which is generally released in one part of the body, but it regulates the activity of the cells in another part of the body. The hormones enter the interstitial fluid and then into the bloodstream, which finally carries them to the cells throughout the body. The hormones, like neurotransmitters, exert their effects by binding to specific receptors present on the target cells. Dear students, let's now discuss the stimulation of the endocrine glands. The endocrine glands are generally stimulated by three mechanisms in order to synthesize and release hormones. The mechanisms involved are as follows. First one is the humoral stimuli, which refers to the control of the hormone release in response to changes in the extracellular fluids or the ion concentration in the blood. For example, a rise in blood glucose levels triggers the pancreatic release of insulin from the beta cells. Insulin causes blood glucose levels to fall, which signals the pancreas to stop producing insulin in a negative feedback loop manner. Second, the hormonal stimulus. It refers to the release of a hormone in response to another hormone. A number of endocrine glands release hormones when stimulated by hormonal secretions released by other endocrine glands. For example, the hypothalamus produces hormones that stimulate the anterior portion of the pituitary gland. The anterior pituitary in turn releases hormones that regulate hormone production by other endocrine glands. Third category is the neural stimuli. In this case, the nervous system directly stimulates endocrine glands to release hormones. For example, in response to stress, the neuronal signaling from the sympathetic nervous system directly stimulates the adrenal medulla to release epinephrine and norepinephrine hormones. Now, the neuroendocrinology or the neuroendocrine system. Neuroendocrinology is one of the important branches of biology, particularly physiobiology, which deals with the study of the interactions between the endocrine system and the nervous system. It is because of the neuroendocrine system that the brain regulates the hormonal activities of the body. as shown in the given figure. The nervous and endocrine systems work together in proper coordination to regulate the body's important physiological functions through a process generally referred to as neuroendocrine integration. The field of neuroendocrinology arose from the recognition that the brain, especially the hypothalamus, regulates and controls the hormonal secretions of the pituitary gland, which ultimately led to investigate numerous important interconnections between the endocrine and the nervous system. The neuroendocrine system represents the coordinated mechanism by which the hypothalamus regulates most important functions of the human body. Dear students, let's now understand the regulation of the neuroendocrine system. As represented in the given figure, the endocrine and the nervous system work together in a coordinated manner. The brain sends instructions to the endocrine system continuously, and in turn it receives feedback from the endocrine glands. It is this very close relationship that frames the nervous and the endocrine systems together as the neuroendocrine system. The hypothalamus, which is also known as the master switchboard, is the part of the brain actually involved in the process of controlling the endocrine system. The pituitary gland, which is connected by a stalk to the hypothalamus of the brain, regulates the activity of the endocrine glands as represented in the given figure. The hypothalamus works by detecting the increasing levels of the target organ's hormone and then sending signals to the pituitary gland. In turn, the pituitary gland releases certain hormones which travel through the bloodstream to the target gland and then instructs the target gland to stop the hormone production. Dear students, let us now understand the regulation mechanism in detail. The hypothalamic pituitary axis represents the central regulatory component of the endocrine system, which consolidates signals from the brain, environmental stimuli, and various feedback loops, adjusting output in order to meet the changing demands. The hypothalamus is sensitive to neural and hormonal stimuli. This information is then integrated by the hypothalamus to generate chemical signals that relay the message onto the pituitary gland. The hormones originating in the neurons of the hypothalamus generally pass through axons and are released from their nerve endings. On reaching the pituitary gland through a portal circulatory system, these hormones regulate the functions of the anterior pituitary gland. Now, the hypothalamic releasing and inhibitory hormones are carried in the hypophyseal portal vessels to the anterior pituitary gland, where they regulate the release of anterior pituitary hormones. The posterior pituitary is under the direct neural regulation control of the hypothalamus. Neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus synthesize hormones that are transported along axons that terminate in the posterior pituitary. These hormones are then released into capillaries within the posterior pituitary gland to impact body parts directly. The hypothalamic hormones regulate the secretion and synthesis of pituitary hormones. Based on their actions, these hormones are known as releasing hormones, as they stimulate the secretion of the pituitary hormones, or inhibiting hormones, which inhibit the secretions of the pituitary hormones. The well-known regulatory hormones, that is releasing and inhibitory hormones of the hypothalamus, are shown in given figure. First, the thyrotropin releasing hormone. It stimulates the release of thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, an important hormone, and prolactin by the anterior pituitary. TRH or thyrotropic releasing hormone is secreted by the hypothalamus and it travels to the pituitary via the hypophyseal portal system. Next, the gonadotropin releasing hormone. It is responsible for the release of follicle stimulating hormone or FSH and luteinizing hormone from the anterior pituitary, which are important in regulating the process of ovulation. Next, the growth hormone releasing hormone. It is a peptide hormone produced by the hypothalamus, carried by the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal circulation to the anterior pituitary gland. It is released from the neurosecretory neuroterminals where it stimulates the synthesis and release of growth hormone or GH. The actions of the growth hormone releasing hormone are opposed by another hypothalamic hormone, that is somatostatin, which is also known as growth hormone inhibiting hormone. The next one in the series is corticotropin releasing hormone. The corticotropin releasing hormone is a polypeptide hormone and a neurotransmitter. Its major function is to stimulate the secretion of adenocorticotropic hormone from the pituitary gland. The next one is the prolactin inhibiting hormone. The prolactin inhibiting hormone dopamine inhibits the release of prolactin from the anterior pituitary gland. Now the hypothalamic control over the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus secretes minute quantities of hormones into the portal veins to control the anterior pituitary gland. By traveling in portal veins directly to the anterior pituitary, their concentration is high enough to produce an effect. The hypothalamic hormones are often released in a pulsatile manner. Hormones which influence the anterior pituitary are secreted by short parvocellular neurons. Hypothalamic neurons that travel directly to the posterior pituitary are magnocellular neurons. As shown in the given figure, the hormones secreted by the anterior pituitary include the following. The first, growth hormone. It is the most abundant hormone of the pituitary tropic hormones. Growth hormone promotes linear growth of bones, especially long bones, by stimulating the growth and calcification of the epiphyseal cartilage cells. It also influences the growth of the visceral organs, adipose and connective tissues, endocrine glands, and striated muscles. The second one is thyroid stimulating hormone. It's a glycoprotein hormone. Its main function is to stimulate the thyroid gland to secrete the thyroid hormones, that is triiodothyronine or T3, and thyroxine, that is T4. Next one is the adrenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH. It is a single chain peptide hormone secreted by the anterior pituitary cells, corticotrophs. ACTH stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete glucocorticoids, that is cortisol mostly, and also small amounts of sex hormones, that is androgens and estrogens. Next, the luteinizing hormone or LH. A surge of luteinizing hormone at mid-cycle induces ovulation and then maintains the corpus luteum after ovulation, that is secreting progesterone. In males, it stimulates the interstitial cells in the testes to produce testosterone hormone. Next, the follicle stimulating hormone or FSH. The follicle stimulating hormone in association with luteinizing hormone helps in the development of the ovarian follicle and stimulates spermatogenesis in case of males. Next, the hormone prolactin. Prolactin secreted by the anterior pituitary cells, that is lectotropes, is primarily involved in the development of the female breast and in the initiation and maintenance of lactation shortly after the childbirth. It is released from the pituitary in large amounts during pregnancy and in response to suckling by means of a sensory neural reflex arising in the nipple. Now, dear students, we will discuss the control of secretion by the anterior pituitary gland. The secretions of the anterior pituitary hormones are generally regulated in the following different ways. Number one, the neurosecretory cells in the hypothalamus secrete 5 releasing hormones which stimulate the secretion of anterior pituitary hormones and 2 inhibiting hormones which inhibit the secretion of the anterior pituitary hormones. Moreover, the negative feedback in the form of hormones released by the target glands decreases secretions of 3 types of anterior pituitary cells. In such negative feedback loops, the secretory activity of gonadotropes, thyrotropes, and corticotropes decreases when blood levels of their target gland hormones rise. For instance, adrenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH stimulates the cortex of the adrenal gland to secrete glucocorticoids, mainly cortisol. In turn, an elevated blood level of cortisol decreases secretion of both corticotrophin and corticotropin releasing hormone or CRH by suppressing the activity of the anterior pituitary, corticotropes and hypothalamic neurosecretory cells respectively. Now, the hormones of the posterior pituitary. 2 major hormones are synthesized in the hypothalamus and released by the posterior pituitary into the systemic circulation. As represented in the given figure, these 2 hormones are oxytocin and vasopressin. These hormones perform the following important functions. First, the oxytocin. Oxytocin affects 2 target tissues, the mother's uterus and breasts during and after the delivery of baby. During delivery, stretching of the cervix of the uterus stimulates the release of oxytocin, which in turn enhances contraction of smooth muscle cells in the wall of the uterus after delivery. It also stimulates milk ejection from the mammary glands in response to the mechanical stimulus provided by the suckling infant. Now, the antidiuretic hormone or ADH. As represented in the given picture, ADH causes the kidneys to return more water to the blood, hence decreasing the urine volume. In the absence of ADH, urine output increases more than tenfold from the normal. So, drinking alcohol often causes frequent and copious urination because alcohol inhibits secretion of ADH. It also decreases the water loss through sweating and causes constriction of arterioles, which increases the blood pressure in turn. Dear students, it was all about today's lecture. Hope you have understood it well. Thank you. Goodbye.